Welcome to Seaview Circle, our podcast in which we review our favorite television shows and movies from the past, present. Where is she?
She's over here.
Oh, okay, let her stay over there. Okay, ready? One more time.
Susie is killing this.
I know, wait.
Oh my God, she's the director. Look.
She's the director. Okay, you're the director. You stay there.
Can we start? She says action, but it just sounds like this.
And possibly the future. Welcome to Seaview Circle, our podcast in which we review and recap our favorite television shows and movies from the past, present, and possibly the future. And in the process, we chat about styles, fashion, and locations often lost to the decades. We do this all in service to our end goal of determining just how highbrow or lowbrow our viewing taste is. Now, Brady, you want to say something?
Sure. For this first season of our podcast, we've been focusing on season 1 of Knots Landing, which is the longest running nighttime serial of its kind from its era. Today's episode is called The Constant Companion, and it aired on CBS on February 21st, 1980. But of course, you may watch it now streaming on plex.tv, where you can find all 343 other episodes of Knots Landing as well.
So the writer is Rob Gilmer. This is his third episode following Community Spirit and The Lie. The director is Henry Levin. This is his second episode.
Okay.
After directing Let Me Count the Ways.
Oh, that was the one with the peanut butter poetry.
Yeah, peanut butter poetry. But as for the IMDb synopsis, it's Ginger is being harassed with gifts from a mysterious source. So this is going to be a good one.
This is going to be a good one.
Finally, Ginger episode.
Yes, some justice for Ginger.
Been waiting for Ginger.
Waiting.
Yeah, it's about
Before
time.
Before we get to that, though, we want to remind you that you are welcome to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Any new followers we have helps the algorithm to bring even more people to our channel, and the more eyes we have on it, then the more likely we are to produce more content, to be perfectly honest. We also would appreciate any likes or thumbs up on any of the individual episodes. You can also comment or leave questions about anything that we mentioned in the podcast. We love interaction on YouTube. It's really fun. And then, of course, you can also share the podcast to any like-minded friends you might have who are fans of Knots Landing, or any of our little deviations off into style and fashions from the 70s and 80s and living in Southern California, so on and so forth.
So the episode opens, we see a vase of yellow flowers, and it kind of pans in, and then we realize we are actually at Ginger's classroom.
Yes.
We're finally at the school.
It's
taken a long time.
First time we're seeing Ginger's classroom, and I'm happy. I'm already feeling justice for Ginger, right?
Yes, I'm glad that we know we're getting a Ginger episode finally.
Yeah. So she's wondering where this vase of flowers comes from, and then this kind of tall, lanky janitor pops in. I think his name was Gordon. He's played by Fred Strithman, I think was his name, and I don't know, he's kind of giving off some creepy vibes, which I think was intentional. And she asks him, do you know who brought these in here? And he's like, well, it wasn't me. And he wonders, well, maybe it was one of the kids. And Ginger says, no, it's not possible because I get here really early.
Right. She mentioned she's there early and she stays late. Now, what I was thinking of immediately was the episode with Eric. Immediately I was thinking, is this a continuation? Is Eric leaving some flowers?
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I was totally going down that road. Now, did you notice when they show that scene too, there's somebody peeping in the window?
I did notice.
Very quickly.
At first I thought it was Scott Holmes who plays Tom Hughes on As the World Turns.
I didn't know who it was, but I just thought that's going to be that's something, right?
Yeah, they don't just have someone walk by the room and peer in for no reason. Yeah.
The next scene opens up, and we're at Gary and Val's house, and they're having breakfast.
Trying to.
Gary's
trying to have some breakfast.
Yeah, and I think Gary is talking about the commercial, isn't he?
Yeah.
About the Knots Landing.
He's kind of running through some ideas for this upcoming Knots Landing commercial. And Valley is completely lost in her own thoughts. We don't quite know why.
Yeah.
He asks her for more coffee, and then she picks up the mug, even though the pot is right there. She picks up the mug and his cereal bowl and takes it over to the sink. And he's like,
Yeah, clearly she has other things on her mind.
So then he can tell that, and he asks her, what's going on? And she says, oh, well, I think I'm just not quite fully awake yet. And I'm like, oh, you're not fully awake, and yet your hair is completely done and you have all your eye makeup on. All right. So he leaves for work, and then you see her
immediately.
Yeah, she runs into the living room. And I thought at this point already that maybe she was going to pull out her writing. I thought she...
Yeah, that's what I saw. When I saw the books come out, I thought, oh, she's starting her writing career.
Yeah, because when Gary was there and she was all distracted, it reminded me of all the times where I'm trying to write something and you walk into the room.
Right.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah, but then she's pulling out the books, and then pretty quickly... I know that there was something there. What doesn't she start going?
She starts going through some random facts for
manifest destiny.
Yeah. And the Mexican American War or something like that. And she gets the date wrong, and then she calls herself a dumbbell.
Yeah, and then so I get very excited because I'm like, oh my God, she's doing the GED.
Yeah.
Which that's relevant. I mean, we know some people that wanted to do the GED, and then you know what? It's fine. It's good.
Yeah.
So
this was an unexpected storyline in this episode, and I'm here for it. All right, so the plot thickens in the next scene.
Or they say the thick plottins.
Yes. We are at the Ocean Crest Elementary School. There's an establishing shot of the school. Now, I'm not sure if that name was real or if they just put a placard over it. But
no, that name is not real. And, well, immediately when I saw that school, it has that look of your LA Unified School District schools built in the 60s. They all kind of look the same. So I did
in California,
do a deep dive on that.
Are indoor outdoor, right?
Yeah, and it looks just like my elementary school that I went to in the Valley. But when I did look that one up, I found out it's Stoner Avenue Elementary, which I know Stoner Avenue is West LA. Because
West LA.
Yeah, it's West LA. When it's I forget, it's on Stoner Avenue. But yeah, so it looks though just like any other of these LA Unified elementary schools and some of the junior highs too of that era.
I definitely would say that this scene brought me the feels in that kindergarten room because Doug, this is exactly the age I would have been at this time in Knots Landing.
Oh, that's so sweet.
The little girl with the pigtails.
That was you, the little girl with the pigtails?
That was Susan. That would have been Susan. We went to kindergarten together.
Okay.
And I would have been one of those little boys for sure, that age. So it really warmed my heart. These kids are so cute in this scene.
They were really cute, and I just loved. I don't know what their names were, but they were sweet.
See Ginger being kind of like this motherly teacher role. It was very sweet. She asks them, "Does anybody know who brought these fresh flowers?" And the one kid says, "It was me."
It was me. And then he says something, "Oh, maybe it's me."
Yeah.
And
it was so cute.
Wasn't that what are these flowers?
Right.
So they were saying chrysanthemums.
She says they're chrysanthemums. And then the little kid tries to pronounce it. And you can't quite do it. So he tries again. It was really, really sweet scene. And then the girl in the pigtails, Susan, we'll call her Susan. She says, "Oh no, he couldn't have brought the flowers because we carpooled together and I didn't see him with the flowers."
Right. So now we know
the mystery continues.
The mystery continues, and then we move to Ginger Lee.
The end of the day, right? It's the
end of the day. She's getting into her Datsun B210 hatchback, and she turns the key, and the car is not starting, and she's really gunning that key. I mean, I was like, okay, be careful. You're not going to ruin your starter.
Yeah.
Then, magically, we see a gentleman next to a yellow gremlin, which, okay, I just can't even begin to tell you. The AMC gremlin is one of my favorite vehicles from the 70s. And, I mean, a yellow one? I was going, wow.
Yeah, it was a standout for sure.
Yeah, it was a standout. So you see the connection, though, that's the person who was looking in the window.
His name is Arthur. She references him Arthur, and he is a character. Oh my gosh.
He's a real goofball. He's very tiny. He's very short.
He's tiny. He actually, in the beginning, I thought he looked like that actor Scott Holmes from As the World Turns. But now that I see him, to me, he looked like Joseph Gian.
Oh, yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Right?
Oh,
later on in Knots Landing.
That's
just like a smaller version.
A mini version of him.
So he's there to say, "Oh, what's going on, Ginger?" And she says, "Oh, my car won't start." And he says, "Oh, well, we should pop the trunk." right? That's what you do when your car doesn't start.
The hood.
They pop the hood. Right, sorry.
Not the trunk.
That's just how little I know about
He knows
cars.
a lot about cars.
So they pop the hood, and then Ginger's like, well, what should we be looking for? He's like, I don't know. And so she says, okay, I'll call the auto club.
Did you notice the music at that point, too, was very eerie?
Yes. This is how we know something's up.
Yeah, musical cue. There you go.
All right, so we're back over at the Ewing house, and, Gary has his collar popped for some reason, which I thought was really strange.
Yeah, and did you notice Valine still had her books open? So obviously, then there's a reference made that
because Gary comes home by surprise.
Yeah, comes home early.
She wasn't expecting him to be there, and so she can't. How else can she explain this away? She has to tell the truth.
She got caught studying.
She is looking to get her GED, and Gary thinks it's a great idea. And then Gary says, well, is you sure this is something you can do all on your own? Why don't you, rely on the help of your husband or your friends? And she's just kind of embarrassed and doesn't think that, she wants to expose the fact that she's such a dunce and doesn't know anything. And she even throws Laura under the bus a little bit because she's talking about the people on the cul-de-sac. She says, Karen has a college degree, and, Ginger obviously went to college because she's a teacher. And even Laura has some college.
I know. I thought that was weird because I always find Laura to be pretty highbrow.
I agree. I agree.
Think.
It's funny because we watched the episode last week, Out of Order, season 3, episode 10. And there's some lines there that Laura delivers that are so clever and smart. It shows that she's really smart. So this was...
Well, maybe, you know what? Maybe Valine's been listening to Richard too often. Because let's face it, he's always belittling her, right?
True.
So it could be
something
that she just thinks that maybe she's dumb because of the way that Richard treats her. Because
at any rate, Val is not ready to rely on her friends in this moment because she is too embarrassed. She has too much pride to reveal that she has not passed the GED. I love that she has a little pencil stuck in her little pigtails. I thought that was really, really cute.
So we're back to the parking lot at the school, and the tow truck has arrived, and the AAA guy tells her that somebody's taken the distributor cap off of the car.
Deliberately.
Deliberately.
There's no way that thing just fell off. And so Arthur asks, well, why would somebody do that? And he says, well, maybe they wanted the distributor cap.
I'm going to tell you something. I had somebody do that to me a million years ago.
Really?
Yeah, and it was, they did it as a
distributor cap is.
Revenging kind of thing. Revenge.
It must have been the same person who you spilled all the garbage.
Probably in high school or after high school. I don't know. I don't remember. But I remember it happening.
The guy says that, well, maybe this person just didn't want you to be able to drive your car home.
Yeah.
So that's a little daunting. And so then she says, well, what can we do about this? And he says, well, I can fix it, but it's going to take a day. So, you're going to have to get a ride home. And he says, if it's not too far, I could probably...
Right, I thought that was really he's offering...
It's all service.
Yeah, it's full service.
Because,
all these guys are sleaze buckets.
Well, because she's very attractive. Ginger's getting eyes from people who are 5 years old.
Yeah.
The little kid, all the way up into this
all
guy.
Eyes on Ginger. All eyes on Kim Lankford.
He's very handsome, the mechanic, but there was also a definite sleaziness to him as well in that moment. So Arthur says, you know what, I can take you back to your house, and she accepts.
And I just started to get very excited because I thought, okay, we're going to go for a ride in the Gremlin. Let's go. Back to her house.
This was so funny because she gets out of the car and then she leans in to thank him. And this dude's already popped out of the driver's seat.
Yeah, he's jumped out.
He's jumped over the shrubs and he's walking up the walkway. He's like, oh my gosh, what a lovely house you have. Let me look at it.
Yeah, he's that kind of guest where you're like, oh, great.
This guy has quite a spring to his step. He's looking around the house. He's like, oh, wow, it's so spacious. Mother and I just have a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, and then he says something like, oh, I love the artwork.
Oh, my gosh. He says the artwork has so much vitality. And meanwhile, it's literally just a musical note in a frame.
Yeah, and then he starts looking through the LPs. I mean, he's a total snoop.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I like jazz.
Yeah, again, another person like
another jazz. That's where I kept thinking at that point. When they said that, I was like, maybe it is Eric.
Yeah.
They did get us going in many directions on this episode, for sure.
So they're talking, and they're talking about the jazz, and then did she put some music on? I can't remember, because he says, he goes, I'd like some coffee. And I'm thinking, Ginger, do not give this gentleman more coffee. Look how much energy he already has.
No, he's already had
turn this guy off.
had 2 lines of cocaine. He doesn't need that.
So she goes in to get the coffee, and then on her way back, it's in like a copper pot, and basically it burns her fingers. And so he's like, ice is the perfect thing for that, you know?
And doesn't he mention his mother? Yeah. It's another one of these. Oh, mother always.
Mama's boy.
Mama's boy. Yeah. He's got all those little
tricks
of the trade from mom.
Did you notice at the beginning of the scene when they walked in the house that the backdrop that they have outside of the set Ward house is totally different than the actual backdrop of Seaview Circle?
No, I didn't notice that.
It's okay. You know, it happens.
I missed that one.
All right, so she's getting the ice, and then Kenny comes home, and Kenny's like, what's going on here?
It's like, who's this little guy?
So Ginger introduces Arthur as her colleague, so we know we officially have that title, that they work together at the school. I mean, we assumed that. And then he's like, so what's going on with the ice? And she explains it, and then she says, I didn't really have time to make dinner. And Kenny says, that's okay. You do wonderful things with leftovers. Must I say, so do you, Doug.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know.
I thought of you.
Usually there's not too many times we have leftovers, but...
So Kenny, of course, invites this guy over, and Ginger's like, why are you inviting him? He's weird. And I think Kenny's kind of amused.
Well,
right?
I kept thinking that Kenny was into it. What I kept getting from it was that because Kenny's been fooling around on the side, he seemed like, hey, this is fine. Let's let her have some fun so then I can have some fun. And that's the way I took it.
Right. I thought that he was amused by how silly this guy was, and he wanted to see him kind of dig himself further.
No, I was looking at it like...
He was
and then I also was getting the vibe from Arthur that maybe he was wanting to swing with both of them.
Okay.
Because, you know...
You're going deep. You're going deep. The layers are
when they were talking about the music after Kenny put a record on, he says, I've got some fascinating African rhythms. And I was
he made a point to knock on the door again after he'd already left, just to tell Ken that.
Just to be
Can we take a break here, just a moment right here? This is the first scene we have with Kenny in the episode.
Yes.
It is actually the actor Jim Houghton's birthday today!
Yay, happy birthday,
James
James
Which is why
Houghton.
I'm wearing my best impression of Kenny today, right?
I guess I'm kind of wearing a Kenny shirt, too.
I think so, too.
It's a bit Kenny.
He would definitely wear that, for sure.
Yeah.
So happy birthday, James. We're enjoying your performance here.
Yes.
On this first season of Knots Landing. So we have the dinner, and it's very awkward because, of course, the only thing this nerd can talk about is bugs.
Right. He's into entomology.
Right.
Is that what it is?
And you can tell Ginger's like, can we get this guy to go? So she's darting those beautiful eyes at him like, can we wrap this up? You know how that is, right? When you're in a situation you got to get out of it, you can't really say it. So she's like, yeah, it's getting late. I got to get up early in the morning. And then Arthur might ask something like, how are you going to get to work tomorrow?
Yeah, it's like, I can pick you up or something like that.
And Ginger's like, no, Kenny's going to do it, right?
No, but then doesn't Kenny say, actually, I can't?
Yeah, he's still trying to pawn her off on him. Because again, I think he's just so amused. Like, you can see the laughter in his face in all these little moments that this guy is like trying to come on to Ginger. And then the moment happens about the fascinating African rhythms, which is, spoiler alert, probably already the best line of the episode.
I would say so. I did write that down as the best one.
So after Arthur leaves, Ginger goes to her bag and she pulls out these books. And apparently somebody has also, in addition to the flowers, been leaving her other gifts, including these books. And so she asks Kenny, did you do this? Are you the one leaving the flowers? And he's like, no, not me. And then he mentions that they're children's books, which is really strange.
Very strange.
Because at this point, if we have suspects for whatever's been going on so far, and actually it hasn't really ratcheted up too much yet, but we do have the car, the distributor cap being missing, we have the flowers, we have these books now. In a way, I kind of almost feel like we need to be doing an Only Murders in the Building suspect board already.
Totally.
And maybe I'll pop it up digitally on here so we can keep track of who are the suspects. Well, we have Gordon, the creepy janitor. We have Arthur, the little crazy little dude running around. We have potentially Kenny, but he's saying it's not him.
Eric.
and Eric. That's in my mind,
Yeah.
right? And I'm keep thinking, okay, we're going to get to the Eric scene eventually, right?
Well, like I said before, I think they're doing a good job of keeping us guessing in this episode, too. So it's definitely a little bit of a mystery going on.
Whodunnit.
And it's getting better,
yes.
Isn't it?
Yes. All right, so we go to the next scene. I guess it's nighttime. I'm guessing, I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell what time
I think it was
was.
nighttime, like late.
Yeah.
It looks to me like it's late night.
So
we're at Gary and Valeen's
This is
house.
probably the weirdest shot.
Yeah, so it's very weird. It's like Valeen is laying there with a book, like on the
Literally
floor.
books on top of her.
Yeah, on the floor. It's like, I don't think I've ever fallen asleep with a book while lying on the floor.
And the way the props are strewn about her is so specific. I just thought you guys can do a little bit better job of making this look natural.
Now, just to be devil's advocate here, I can still recall my mother, however, sitting on the couch with a teacup. And I remember her having the teacup in her hand, and she fell asleep like in the teacup. But I think she finished the tea, but still was like the teacup was still like on her finger. So I don't know. I guess it's strange, but it could happen.
So Gary he tries very gently to take these books off of her, and she doesn't really move too much. But it's showing here that Valeen is dedicated. She's dedicated to the studying.
And then, of course, Gary takes off his navy blue robe and puts it over her to keep her warm.
Yes.
All in at the same time being able to see his body, rippled muscles, wearing his tank top. You know, I mean, that was fun.
All right, so it's the next day, I guess. I don't know what time of day it is, but Ginger is sitting on this big, oversized 70s pillow that is really showing off the browns.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Oranges.
I was totally digging that pillow, too. I was like, okay.
And I just got to tell you, these colors, this color combination in the 70s, I'm a huge fan. We actually have it kind of all over our studio, kind of in a way, an homage to this period. And you can also see it in the Ewing kitchen as well. It is full force in there.
Oh, I love that, like yellowish Formica tops.
Yeah, and like the wallpaper is all that kind of
styling. Everybody wears the complementary
chocolate
colors.
Browns. It's just,
it's so great.
Good. So good. So anyway, Ginger's sitting there reading, and then she gets a phone call, and it's a child. I believe it's a male, a boy's voice saying,
"Mommy, Daddy."
They say it twice. Mommy,
it sounds recorded. Sounds
weird,
like somebody played a cassette tape.
See, you already felt that. See, I was wondering, well, why doesn't she say something?
No.
Hello, are you okay?
I just took it because, as a former crank phone caller from the 70s, from the 80s.
Dumps the garbage on the lawn.
I'm a terrible person. No, we used to do this. We used to record things, and we would call people on the phone.
This is another shout
and then we would pre-record it with a cassette tape.
We totally did the same thing.
We're not going to talk about Help Me Mary today, are we?
We're not going to talk about this stuff.
But anyway, that's something that like a kid would do.
Yeah. Okay. I was following along with the storyline here. I wasn't thinking of crank calls. I was thinking, why is Ginger, a school teacher, not responding to this child saying, "Mommy, Daddy, Mommy, Daddy"? And then in the next time she gets prank calls, I don't know how many hours later, the next day, she actually does say something. Actually, she screams, "Say something, damn it!" Which I thought was pretty wild. Again, I'm still thinking it's kids or something,
So we're back at Ocean Crest Elementary. Did you notice the sign was crooked? The first time was obstructed. Second time was crooked. So you're like, okay,
that's funny.
Clearly they just stuck it up there.
Hey, listen, it's hard to produce shows. I can just tell you right now. I mean, we're on our 10th show. Yeah. And the lighting has to be redone every single time. We always get it wrong or we get it right. Who knows?
And we don't have a tech, here with us.
It's all us.
We're just doing it
We're the stand-ins and we're the gaffers.
We do it all.
Okay. And the best boys, the grips.
The best boys. So we open up on a scene again of an even bigger flower display.
Yeah, I'm glad that the flower displays are getting bigger because that first one just looked kind of sad to me. But here we go. Yeah,
bigger bunch of flowers.
And then also a corsage there, which
and there was something else there too.
Again, that made me think of Eric again. Because at that age, when you're in high school or whatever, you would present a girl with a corsage.
Now, and then she pulls something off the seat, and there's a little present on the seat, too.
She then opens it up, and it's like some sort of, to me, it looked like a bib or a washcloth.
I saw it was a knit, crocheted heart.
Yeah. So then we hear footsteps, and she goes to the door, and there's Arthur again.
Arthur's back.
And then he runs off. And at this point, we know, okay, this dude is suspect number one
Totally.
here.
Yeah.
If we have our murder board, our suspect board, only murders in the building, he is now...
He's moved up to position number 1.
He's position number 1. That is some creepy behavior.
Yeah, totally.
All right, now back over at the Ewing kitchen, and Valine is studying away.
Oh, and you know what I loved was this. Tick, tick.
Yeah, she has the kitchen timer, one of those little plastic kitchen timers you would do. And so, because I guess to take the GED, it's a timed test.
Yeah.
She wants to make sure that she can answer all these questions in the time that is allotted to her. And guess what? She doesn't.
She doesn't make it.
So she starts panicking, and actually she starts crying in that moment. And so then later on, I think Gary sees her, but Valine definitely finally now does seem a little frazzled. Because before her hair and her makeup was so perfect, now she's definitely looking a little tired. And Gary's like, something's got to change here. You got to stop being so prideful here. If you're really serious about this, if this is really important to you, you're going to need to rely on your friends.
That's right. You got to ask for help, which of course, you know, being on the cul-de-sac.
Help is only a phone call away.
Right. It's a lot of back and forth, isn't it?
There's a lot of back and forth in this episode. It kind of keeps the energy moving.
Yeah.
And it does kind of keep the suspense going as far as this whodunit. We're now back in the classroom, and I thought this is really cute because the kids come in again. There's 3 featured kids, and they're talking about, I guess, the difference between the boys' and the girls' bathroom.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, I don't understand. Why are there 2 different rooms? And then the little girl I'm calling Susan, even though that's not her name, she says, well, it's because at home it's different. Anyway, so there is another gift waiting for Ginger.
A surprise gift from Gordon's delivery service.
Right, yeah. Gordon the janitor is there, is like, here it is. And then it's this little tiny vial of perfume, which again made me think of, this is a gift that a young person gives to an adult.
Right. Yeah, I kept thinking again, we're back to
I'm thinking Eric again.
Eric is back in the play.
I'm waiting. You know? When are we going to see the scene with Eric? You know, this is the interesting thing. We saw in the credits that Claudia Lano's name was in there in the beginning. And so I'm waiting for a scene with Claudia Lano and, you know, Diana and Eric talking about his attraction to Ginger.
Yep, nothing
Well, we haven't seen it yet.
Not yet, anyway. This is about halfway through.
So Ginger's like, what is this? And Gordon's like, yeah, you got another gift. She's definitely getting a little freaked out now because we've got flowers, we've got perfume.
And then, of course, the next scene, she sees Arthur.
Yes, and he's waiting at her car again. Yeah. And he finally kind of comes clean. He says, I am so embarrassed that I ran away earlier. They talk about it, and he says, no, I have not been giving you those flowers.
He said, I gave you the pot holder because I felt you needed it because you burned your hand.
Right.
But he says he's allergic to flowers.
Yes, and he also said that he would never be so forward as to give gifts like that to a married woman.
Right. He believed in the sanctity of marriage.
Right.
Which I was like, oh, well, he is a good boy, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because he kind of ran away again, like nervously to his gremlin, and he was like running like a little child with his little lunch pail. And so I think in that moment, I think Ginger can see, okay, this he's not the one, you know, he's not the one, even though he got the pot holder, definitely he gave her that gift, but that made sense because of what had happened.
Boy, isn't she lucky though? She gets presents like every day.
How many presents?
I mean, can you imagine working and you'd be getting presents?
As a kindergarten teacher.
A kindergarten teacher, maybe you get an apple. You get a whole thing that you got to bring an apple for your teacher.
Exactly. So I guess Ginger's back home now, and Kenny's there, and so she's talking through this dilemma. What is going on here with these flowers and all these weird gifts? And she even says, you know, it feels like a puzzle.
And
right?
Did she say it feels like deja vu?
Deja vu. The gifts are feeling familiar
weird
in some way, right? Yeah. And she does tell Kenny, she goes, I really don't think it's Arthur after what, you know, had just happened at the school. Then the doorbell rings.
Doorbell rings, and it's a
little person
singing
telegram. Now, when he opened the door and I saw a little person there, I just immediately thought, I know this is terrible, I thought, oh, maybe he was a munchkin from The Wizard of Oz.
Well, that's what I thought too, because he was a little older.
Yeah,
and I kept thinking he's around that same time frame.
Do you know that the same soundstage where Knots Landing was filmed is the same soundstage?
Oh, right, was MGM.
It's the same one that did. It's the same soundstage.
Right, it's the same way they did The Wizard of Oz.
So I thought that was a tie-in, but I guess not, because it's not that actor.
Yeah, no, it's not that actor. But anyway, he sings Happy Birthday.
Sings Happy Birthday to Ginger, and she's like,
it's not my birthday.
It's not my birthday for 5 more months. So
and he does say one other weird thing. I wrote it down. He said, the world is full of surprises.
Yeah.
And to me, then immediately I was like, is this Twin Peaks? Like it was getting a little weird. Getting very trippy.
I agree. To me, this was very creepy. To have a singing telegram come to your house and wish you happy birthday.
And deliver
And
a
if
package.
you remember,
Again.
he also delivers the singing telegram to Ginger Tillman, which is her maiden name. And I thought, okay, who would know that? That's creepy that somebody would know that.
Right.
So he leaves. They open up the package, and it is a birthday cake with a big 8 on it. Although I wasn't sure if it was like an infinity sign.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure.
We didn't really know. But see, again, Ginger's looking at this going,
I just looked at the cake and I thought it looked really tasty.
This is all feeling very familiar to Ginger. And then Kenny's still like, I still think it's Arthur. So he's like, let's go. I want to go talk to this guy.
Yeah.
So this was kind of fun because we get to see inside of Arthur and his mother's 2-bedroom apartment, I guess. And there is print, speaking of 70s prints, all over this place on the little recliner, on the
Super
walls.
70s.
Wow. But anyway, I guess Mom went out.
Yeah, Mom went out.
He says that, I think he references that she's not feeling well or something like that. But they're having a conversation, and it is, again, very clear to Ginger that he is not the one.
Cut back to Val's house again, and she's finally decided that she's going to take some help from her friends.
Right.
So she makes a first phone call
to Laura
and says, "Oh, are you free? Could you maybe come over for some coffee?"
Yeah. She hangs up the phone, and then she walks over to the table, and you can see the look on her face. She's like, maybe I could ask Karen, too. So then she goes back over.
Then she calls Karen.
And she asks for Karen's help as well. It was very sweet.
Yeah, it was very cute. It's like, oh, right, she's going to rock and roll. She's going to pass this thing.
Yeah. So later on, we see the actual scene of them studying. And did you notice Valine is wearing this, like, really cute green print dress? It's nice to see her in some color, because usually she just wears kind of like neutral colors or blacks and whites. So it was cool to see her in some color. But they're chewing over the Pythagorean theorem.
And I was thinking to myself, I don't even know what the Pythagorean
I don't know what the
Pythagorean
Pythagorean
is. I don't remember that.
Are you kidding me? I had to look that up.
I had to look it up, too. Well, I actually didn't have to look it up because I just waited for
That's right.
The entry of Richard.
Who invited Richard? He always shows up all of a sudden.
He just shows up. Like, I was thinking, he just, barged in and came over.
What did he say? He's like, you having a schmooze fest?
Yeah, he said, you guys are schmoozing the day away?
Yeah.
Something like that.
But he does step in to help. And, I mean, probably he does so to, like, show how smart he is or whatever.
Well, and I liked it because I learned the theorem.
I learned the theorem, too, and
just
it was
by
actually
watching.
very simple. And Val also understood it as soon as he brought up
I could do that right now with a pair of reading glasses.
I love how he says...
Reading glasses and two pairs of reading glasses and a pen.
Exactly. Can we show that?
Yeah.
We can't really show that.
Well, it's a triangle.
So, yeah, and I thought it was really cute because he takes out a fork, a knife, and a spoon, and he says, let me explain this, what this old Greek man was saying. I thought that was really, really cute. But ultimately, he still proved himself a jerk.
Right.
Because as soon as that was solved, then he said to Laura, now do you think we can have some dinner?
Yeah, he's like, okay. Hey, Mom, what's for dinner?
There was a shot of, or a look of Val to Laura, and she's just like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Back at Ginger and Kenny's house.
They finally decided to consult some professional help.
Right, we have a cop, or a plainclothesman.
Yes.
Lieutenant, we figured out.
Yeah. And he basically says that this guy, this admirer, has not quite gone far enough for them to really do anything. Yeah, he's harassing by giving all these gifts, but until he does something more egregious, the cops can't really do anything. So his suggestion is to Ginger to just write a list of all the potential suspects of who it might be. The other part of this scene that I guess is important to know is that Kenny has to go to San Francisco for a concert, and he's like, maybe I'll just cancel it. And then Ginger says, no, it's okay. You can go. If there's a problem, I can just run over to a neighbor's. So the lieutenant knows, though, that she's going to be home alone potentially.
Right, and doesn't he say, well, I can come back later around 6 o'clock?
For that list.
So that's established. It's nighttime. We see Ginger coming back home in the Datsun B210 hatchback
And
again.
suddenly it's a very blustery evening on the cul-de-sac. Now, back a couple episodes in the commentary, Ted and Joan had mentioned that filming over there in Granada Hills, it often would be very windy.
It's always windy over there.
But in this particular situation, they are playing it up to make it kind of scary and more suspenseful. And it does kind of almost feel like a Halloween moment here because there's howling wind and leaves and all this stuff. And so Ginger pops out of the car. She goes to get the mail, and there's a package.
and she opens it up, and it's a cassette tape.
Mm.
And that was cool. I liked seeing them establish Kenny's audiophile setup.
Put to use.
Yeah. Finally, it's like, oh, we're going to finally use a cassette now. So
Yeah.
you got the LP, you got the turntable, you got the reel-to-reel, and you got the state-of-the-art cassette tapes.
Cassettes were becoming very popular at this point.
My cassette
the 80s.
pet.
So we hear this tape, and it's this weird kind of melange of disparate sounds.
Looks like a crying baby.
Crying baby.
It's a little metal, like a Bell's xylophone thing. Kids like
doing
Fisher-Price.
Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star.
Yeah, it's very creepy.
There are some children playing, kind of can't really hear what's going on, and then we hear again.
Mommy, Daddy.
And this time, isn't it a female voice?
What was weird, though, is I kept thinking, why aren't you playing it past the first 20 seconds? She just rewinds the first 20 seconds.
I think the reason is because she recognizes a sound. There's a squeaky toy.
Oh, it's a squeaky toy.
That's what I think she recognizes.
Okay.
So her mind's starting to go, okay, wait a minute here. She's trying to put the pieces together.
Yeah.
She's really creeped out by this, and so she tries to call Kenny in San Francisco, wherever he's at for this gig, and she can't get through to him. So at that point, what does she do? She grabs the tape out of the stereo, and then she's going to leave, and she's stopped at the door.
By the cops.
Surprise, it's the lieutenant.
Right, so it must be 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's obviously daylight saving time, probably at that point, too. It's dark.
She probably forgot that he was coming over, because she's definitely surprised. He is kind of handsome, I think, at the door there. But when he comes in, again, things start to get real creepy really quick.
And of course, you start to think, oh, he must be
a suspect?
He must be the suspect.
This makes no sense to me, why he would suddenly be a suspect, because how would he even have known about her before? But
no,
they're definitely trying to make you believe that he's a suspect, because he says some really creepy things.
He says some really creepy things, but what becomes quite apparent is, here we are again, men are just drawn to Ginger.
Yeah.
It's the second time now this guy's trying to throw himself at Ginger while Kenny's away, and you're like, give me a break. When this stuff's going on, you're going to try it. That's not exactly a good time.
Now, this is actually a line of ADR that they snuck in, if you didn't catch that. Because, okay, so
what's ADR?
ADR is when they go into the studio afterwards to record something that didn't go well in the initial recording. So, like, for example, when we did our watch-along of the Land of the Free, and later on we had to do some later recordings because certain things didn't... that was ADR.
That's the ADR.
So oftentimes you'll notice it when they're on location, especially, like, say, at the beach or something where there's a lot of wind. They will have to re-record those pieces of dialogue and try to match the lips, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a line that's thrown in there. I'll get to it in a second, because first, Ginger's like, or the lieutenant's like, so do you have that list? Ginger says, sure, maybe, I don't know, they didn't really talk about it, but she says, I got this tape. And so, I think they put the tape on again, and you can tell that Ginger's really upset, and he says something like, want to talk about it? And then he's like probing her, like really pressing her to reveal what this kind of deja vu feeling is. And she says something like, they're very triggering thoughts. It's very personal. And then here's the line that snuck in there. It says, I'm here, dear. It's okay.
Yeah, I was like, what? Yeah, it was weird that they were...
No lieutenant would ever say, I'm here, dear.
Yeah.
Right? So they snuck that in because I think that Ginger's reaction to the whole situation is so abrupt and violent, they needed something that was even more creepy. Because then if you notice, as soon as she's like, please leave, he's like, okay, and just know you can always call me if you need anything.
Yeah, so it didn't make sense in the setup, but they did.
Here we go.
Anyway.
This was that scene in the episode where they're kind of like playing with the reality to get, something going. So anyway, he leaves, and then she does go over to Karen's house.
Yeah. Now, I thought it was weird, though, that...
Oh, wait, first the phone rings. Oh, she goes to Karen's house, and then the phone rings.
Phone rings, and it's Kenny trying to reach her.
She doesn't want to answer it because she thinks it's a prank call.
Right, but it's Kenny on the payphone trying to reach her. So, obviously, Kenny does care.
Yeah, he does. He does. Karen and Sid have brought Ginger in to discuss what's going on, and Ginger says that she thinks that the person behind all this is her ex-boyfriend from when she was in high school. I guess she was 16. She and the ex-boyfriend were expecting a child, and Ginger's mother did not want her to have the baby, so she had an abortion.
Right, so that was the big reveal.
Yes, that her ex is behind all this because the cake said 8, and the baby would have been 8 years old right around now. I think Karen says, well, why don't you go talk to him or whatever, get Kenny and, can go with you and go talk to him. And she's like, oh, well, Kenny doesn't know.
Yeah, she never told Kenny. So that was kind of like a big deal.
And there was a nice kind of cross, a callback to the episode with Lily May, where it was kind of the subject was mothers between everybody. We had those flashbacks, and the flashback with Ginger at the time, I remember feeling very sort of, I don't know, a little weak, a little out of place, but now we see the connection here that Kenny didn't know. And that's why Ginger is still pining for a baby at this point. So, because Ginger has not told Kenny, Karen offers to take Ginger to go see the ex-boyfriend.
I love Karen.
I love Karen.
She's such a good egg, isn't she? So the next scene we see, Gary is taking Val to take her GED test. I was just instantly triggered. I saw the building and I got super excited because...
It was triggering.
No, I know that building so well because I'm spending a lot of time really recently taking my mother to the doctor up in Santa Clarita. So I pick her up and we go up Balboa every time. So every time I go up Balboa, I see that really cool church.
Balboa, again, is the main thoroughfare in Granada Hills where the cul-de-sac you can access.
So I always pass the Knollwood Street and the country club would be on the right, but on the left is the Knollwood United Methodist Church, and they show it. It's really cool, like 60s 70s architecture. It's all white, and you see it in the shot, and then they pull around, and I think actually they might have like a school, a Lutheran, kind of like a church school in the back.
Okay.
So that's where she's taking her test.
I mean, literally probably right across Balboa.
Oh, it's right across. It's the one side of Balboa. It's the west side of Balboa. And then to the east is...
The shopping center.
No, it's past the shopping center.
Okay.
So it's as you're going north, okay? So you're heading up towards San Fernando. San Fernando Boulevard. Recently, I've been like, I kind of want to stop and take a photo because I love the architecture.
This is to have a gentleman who grew up in the area.
I love that building.
Gosh.
I always look at it and go like, God, that would be such a great nightclub or something.
We always want to turn churches into nightclubs. It's just who we are.
Yeah, that's who we are.
So yeah, Gary's dropping her off, and then we're just going to spoil it right now for you. Later on, he picks her up. And she has passed.
She's passed the GED. Yay!
And again, she relied.
Congratulations, Valine.
To get through the Pythagorean theorem.
And let's face it, she took that GED. Pretty soon, she's going to be writing books.
All right, so now we are with Karen and Ginger, and they are visiting with John, who's the ex. I guess the thing was they didn't really know where John was, but she knew where John's mother still lived.
Yeah.
And so that's who they've gone to visit. And they're outside, and the shot kind of takes you in from the garden, and there's all these chrysanthemums.
And you see the yellow chrysanthemums. It's like immediately like, okay.
All right, we're
getting there.
Confirmed that John is probably the guy who's doing this, right? So we go to the table, and there's Ginger and Karen talking to John's mother, and Karen has the Gibson girl hairdo once again. I want to give a little shout out to the Instagram account, the Escapism Hatch, that's Marcus over there, who messaged us and said, this is in regards to the episode the last one, Civil Lives, where Karen had the Gibson girl hairdo. She was trying to make herself look more posh in front of Sid's ex-wife.
Right.
He says, Marcus says, you made my day giving that loose bun a name. Loved it paired with late 70s, early 80s fashion. Thanks again for your podcast. Loving it. I'm sure it is a lot of work, but I just want you to know that the work is appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
And Marcus actually has another Instagram account where he's a huge fan of Charlie's Angels.
Oh, cool.
And I think, a lot of the angels had the hair in that bun, right? It's kind of loose, tousled, kind of sexy. When it's paired with the right outfit, it can be really
it's a look,
sexy.
It's a look.
But when it's paired with what Karen was wearing in the other episode with the buttoned up thing, it's like, come on, that's a little stodgy. But anyway, we're back at John's mother's house, and she's going to this big long backstory about how she was the den mother to John and his little group of friends. This was after her husband had passed away. She decided not to sell the house and downsize. She kept the big house so that all the friends could come over, and it kept the place
And she did
alive.
say, children are a blessing.
Yes.
And I was like, oh boy, we got one here.
Yes. Her name is Beatrice Handelman. That's the character name.
Yeah, when they said Beatrice, I just started laughing because there's a little in-joke here between Brady and I. He's like, okay, Beatrice, he always says this. So I just thought it was funny.
We always talk about Beatrice.
Oh, Beatrice.
Is it Beatrice Dahl?
Beatrice Dahl, like the actress.
Because that's spelled differently, or is it just, we always say Beatrice. It's really weird.
But anyway, Beatrice is in the scene,
and
I instantly recognized her too. I was like,
oh yeah.
I was like, when I looked her up,
I recognized her immediately because my sister and I have seen the movie Mommy Dearest more times
right, that's what I was
than any
gonna say.
other film probably.
Right.
This is Mrs. Chadwick.
Mrs. Chadwick from
School for Girls.
That's right. But I also noticed that she had been in loads of Dallas episodes too. Yes. So a lot of the Dallas fans would recognize her.
Yes, she was in 44 episodes. Her name is Priscilla Pointer.
And you want to know something? She is still alive. She's 100 years old.
No.
Yes. At least at least as of today's podcast recording, she is still alive.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure if you're a Dallas fan, you know that she was in 44 episodes. She played Pamela and Cliff's mother in seasons, 1981 to 1983. She was in a bunch of other horror films as well. She was in Carrie.
Oh, cool.
She was in A Nightmare on Elm Street. She was in Blue Velvet.
Oh, wow.
She's pretty prolific. But of course, she will always be Mrs. Chadwick to me, and that was filmed right around the same time of this episode, so that's why they look so similar.
She looks bored, just like
the big meat of this particular scene is that I think Ginger finally says, I really would like to get in touch with your son, and Beatrice is like, didn't you know? He went to Vietnam, soon after high school. He came back with an injury, and he passed away 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So I guess that means that John is no longer
John is not our suspect anymore. However, Beatrice
jumps right to the top of the list.
She gets right up there now.
All those chrysanthemums out in the garden.
Yes.
Before we continue on with the episode, I wanted to just talk about, again, Priscilla Pointer again, being part of all those great classic horror films. It reminded me that we actually have a letter from the sack.
Oh, we do.
Which may have something to do with that.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
Shall we read it before we
rip
move on
the Band-Aid off? Let's go.
Letters.
Do it.
From the sack. Actually, you're going to read it. Do you mind?
I'm going to Okay. I'm going to put glasses on. If I can. Letters from the sack via Gmail. Hi, guys. Gina here from Atlanta. I am a horror queen, so I really appreciated your jump scare to season 3, the reaction podcast to the Three Sisters. I had a work meeting, so I missed the first half of the live watch chat, but I did see the end. Fun that you included the trailer to the schlock monster flick Frogs that Joan Van Ark co-starred in before her role on Knots. I also saw that you had the afterwatch discussion of the Three Sisters on YouTube, and I love that you mentioned The Haunting with Julie Harris and Jim Houghton in The Twilight Zone as likely inspirations for the episode. It got me thinking, have you seen many of the other horror suspense films that feature actors from Knots Landing? Did you know that young Tanya Crow even appears in a scary film, Dark Night of the Scarecrow from 1981? I did not know that. I had no idea. Great work on your podcast. Looking forward to many more.
Yeah, so I was going to say, this letter, when I got this, thank you, by the way, Gina, it kind of set me into a little bit of a tizzy because there's so much. Actually, so
in this
many of the actors from Knots Landing have appeared in some sort of horror, thriller, or suspense film. I have to say, I want to give another shout out to another Instagram account. This one's called Knots_Landing_International. They put together a really nice compendium during Halloween of all the different movies or TV shows or TV movies that the Knots actors had appeared in. So,
oh my God.
To be perfectly honest, other than Frogs, other than The Haunting, other than Twilight Zone, and maybe Friday the 13th, which is probably the most popular role, right? Betsy Palmer, who played Aunt Ginny later on.
Aunt Ginny.
She's Jason Voorhees' mother. We haven't really seen any of those other ones, we haven't seen the Tanya Crow one. I would like to see it.
This is part of the problem of doing this podcast is that now there's
so many tangents.
You end up like, there's about 10 more things that you have to watch.
Right.
Because you're like, I never heard of this.
Right.
Okay, let's go.
One thing that I saw that I thought was interesting was there's a movie called Terror Among Us, which actually stars Kim Lankford and Ted Shackelford together. And it's not really a horror movie. It's more like a thriller, because I guess in the movie, Ted Shackelford actually plays a rapist, and he's been convicted and thrown in jail, and some of his victims, including Kim Lankford.
So that's kind of awkward, but I want to ask you, was that before or after Knots Landing?
I think it was filmed before Knots Landing.
Okay.
The funny thing is, I always kind of thought that they would make a cute couple.
Oh, I think they make a cute couple.
Gary and Ginger.
I don't think though. I think Gary likes blondes.
Maybe, yes.
That's
We figured that out. Well, until Jill Bennett shows up.
Until Jill Bennett. He likes crazies.
So, yeah, in the movie, though, he's released from jail, and so Ted goes after all these people that had testified against him, including Kim Lankford. And Tracy Reed, who is an actress who also appears in Knots Landing many, many years later. So it was just interesting. And all these connections, all these different actors working on other projects, it just got us thinking of a good topic for this week's Untying the Knot. Might be the mother of all TV shows that had people work together. It is, of course, the Love Boat.
Which we're big fans of the Love Boat.
Oh, of course. And it's definitely part of the more lowbrow side of things.
It's lowbrow, but I got it.
It's a lot of fun. And it is timely because, we were talking about it earlier, that Jack Jones.
Yeah, Jack Jones, who sang the iconic theme song, just passed away.
Yeah.
Now,
so let's get into it.
This is
the
Love
Untying the Knot. In this segment, we take deep dives into a specific production aspect of the series, or perhaps provide a bio of fan fave cast members.
I gotta tell you, this was really overwhelming. I could not believe, not only do we have quite a few stars of Knots Landing that have been on the Love Boat, but they have been on multiple times. And what's so crazy is, if I look up the tallies here, I could just start reading them, starting with who was on the Love Boat the most.
Can I guess?
Michelle Lee.
Of course, Michelle Lee.
She is featured on 6 episodes of the Love Boat. Well, basically, she played 5 different characters, and then in the last one that she did, it was like a 2-parter.
Oh, okay.
So she played the same person. So
now, can we just stop you right there? We have not seen all of these episodes.
No,
we have not seen every episode.
But we did see one of the ones with Michelle Lee.
Yes, it's nice to see her in a role where she's not just a housewife on the cul-de-sac. To see her more glammed up. It definitely feels more of her kind of Broadway roots.
Yeah, so that was cool. But of course, we'll have plenty more. I think right now we're able to watch all those on like Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
So they're streaming. So you can watch every season.
What else you got from me?
So Michelle Lee was 6. Now we got the next one. It's a tie between Joan Van Ark and Michelle Phillips. Each doing 5 episodes of The Love Boat.
Great.
Obviously different seasons. Now the next actor from Knots Landing that is kind of prolific on here is Kim Lankford. We just saw one the other night with her. Remember?
We did just watch one.
I can't remember what her character's name was, but she didn't have a lot to say.
She didn't. She plays a character who has come on the boat after having plastic surgery. She's had a nose job.
Yeah, she had only like a little thing on her nose,
she's
a little
doing
bandage.
Her recuperation, right, on the boat to escape being seen back home with any bruises.
And of course, Gopher is making goo-goo eyes at her like the whole time, which...
He does say, you have some of the most pretty eyes, and she really does.
She does.
Right?
But I mean, my whole problem that I always have, too, with Love Boat is that they're always coming on to the guests. It's in hospitality, that is a no-no.
This crew gets real busy.
They do get a lot of tail.
The crazy thing with that particular episode, again, very lowbrow, there is a chimpanzee.
The chimpanzee was great.
And is stealing all these, like a kleptomaniac chimpanzee, basically.
Scene stealer. Okay, so now the next prolific Knots Landing cast members on the Love Boat. We got a 3-way tie.
Oh, okay.
So we have Donna Mills, James Houghton, and actually Tracy Reed. All doing 3 episodes each.
Well, isn't that weird?
Because
Tracy Reed was in that TV movie with Ted Shackelford and Kim Lankford.
Right, that's another connection.
Now,
there.
Can you remind me, Tracy Reed, who she played on Knots Landing?
So she played Frank's girlfriend.
After
Lynn Moody passed away on the show.
Right.
Her character.
Actually, after she was mauled down by a car.
But we don't want to go there.
We didn't want to see Lynn Moody go. Hey, wait, isn't Lynn Moody?
No, Lynn Moody's on here too, but we're going to talk about that.
Tracy Reed. Okay,
Tracy Reed.
Oh, wait, we got to stop though, because we just watched one of the Jim Houghton episodes, right?
Oh, right.
So we did watch one of his kind of in tribute to the fact that today's his birthday. In
Yeah.
this episode, he is a film director or a commercial director. He doesn't really have a big role, but he is trying to get the replacement for Julie McCoy, who is Judy McCoy.
Judy McCoy.
And trying to get her to do a commercial for the Love Boat. And interestingly enough, Judy McCoy is played by Pat Klaus, who is also one of the victims that Ted Shackelford raped in the movie.
In the movie. They're all connected. They're all connected.
My mind
I
is
was
crazy.
going to say that I thought that James Houghton's character on the Love Boat, too, did play a little bit into the Kenny thing because he was like, he was directing, right? He was saying, he had her sing.
Right.
And he needed her to sing the song for part of the
And he definitely was a little
debut.
hands-on in his approach with this
Sure
directing.
was.
They definitely, it was a love match between the
And
two.
it was a little later. It was in the 80s, so his hair was a little salt and peppery.
Yeah. He looked good. It was after Knots.
Yeah, it was after Knots. Another tie. This is Julie Harris.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we've seen one of the episodes with her.
Well, we mentioned Julie Harris in the episode with Charlene Tilton when Lucy comes to visit Knots Landing, that while the grandmother, right, Lily May, had never met Lucy, they did appear together in the final episode of The Love Boat.
Right. And then actually, Pam Grier,
Oh!
who had a very small part on Knots Landing as...
That's right, wasn't she a detective?
She was like a detective. She was on the show as Cynthia Wilbur.
Okay.
2 episodes.
Okay.
So that's kind of the main bulk of the people who were more than once. Now, honorable mentions.
Yes.
We have Claudia Lano,
Yes.
which we just watched this last night.
We just watched it last night.
It was so fun.
good!
Susie Scott. She's from
this
1983.
was so good. We were rolling on the
We were
couch.
rolling, and Claudia looked really, really great.
She's playing a character who has to come on the boat to deliver, shockingly again, a singing telegram. But she's dressed as a cat.
Yeah, with a white furry tail and like kind of a bikini-ish
She's kind of
type of
delivering
thing.
a kind of like a Dear John message to Donnie Most.
Johnny Most.
Okay, and so I guess he was going to go on this cruise with his girlfriend, and then she sent the singing telegram instead to say, sorry, I ain't coming. So then the whole episode is the two of them kind of going back and forth, and eventually, of course, falling in love. But is Claudia Lano not the absolute scene stealer and linchpin of the entire episode?
I was going to say, she was the scene stealer, and if anything, like, if we were saying on the highbrow, lowbrow, she got the highbrow marks.
Yeah.
And whereas the other people were not so great, well, at least not Donnie Most. Claudia was like great. So that was really fun to see that.
Good episode. I think that's in 1983. So
yeah, 1983. Now we also have honorable mention of other episodes.
Sure.
People. Howard Duff, who comes in later as Greg Sumner's father. Okay. He's on an episode as well. Danielle Brisbois, if you recall her.
Yes, she plays Greg's
daughter, Mary Frances.
First casting.
The first Mary Frances. So I think that's pretty much it with the, that covers everybody.
Wait a minute.
No. Oh, there's one more. This is a big one, and I've not seen this. Ted Shackelford has played in this very weird, maybe somebody knows this, it says 1990, The Valentine Voyage of Love Boat. So it must be like after it was canceled and it was a TV movie, but he was in that playing a character called Paul Royce. So we're going to have to check that one out.
I want to check out that. I want to see the Lynn Moody one. I want to see the Michelle Phillips one. And I want to see, I don't think we've seen any with Donna Mills.
Well, I think, if anything, if we're going to do an offshoot of this podcast, which we said we'd like to do, I think that would be fun to maybe we should just start off and do a couple Love Boats.
We could do some watch-alongs.
Yeah, do a watch-along on a Love Boat. Yeah. If you guys want to watch along,
let us know.
Let us know if you want to watch along on a Love Boat. And
it's such eye candy all the time, not just with like the people walking around in bathing suits, but just like there's so much color in that show. Do you know what I mean? There's so much going on.
And probably a good tie-in with this is to do one. If we do one of these people from Knots Landing, it's fun to see them in these different roles. Yeah. So we could try it.
So thank you very much, Gina, for sending in that message on Gmail. If you would like to send us a message or a question to be featured in Untying the Knot, you can do so via our Instagram, which is at seeviewcircle. That is SEE View Circle. You must know that by now. Or you can also email us via Gmail at seeviewcircle@gmail.com. All right, we're back to the episode, and we are at the big scene.
The climax.
I'm going to actually call it an anticlimax, to be honest. So don't get me wrong. I'm really happy. Justice for Ginger. I'm really happy that Kim Lankford has a really great scene. I just feel like after everything that we've gone through with this Whodunnit, and it's kind of creepy and all these great moments, and then not to also have the payoff of a possible Eric as suspect, I don't know. It just kind of felt a little bit of an anticlimax.
Yeah, it did a little fizzle. Now, a little bit of a fizzle.
That being said, it is a very lovely scene between these two women. It is Ginger going to visit John's mother, Mrs. Handelman, Beatrice. Ginger basically says, I know it was you that is doing this, that is sending me all this crazy stuff. And she eventually comes clean, and she says that, yeah, she's doing it because basically she sees Ginger as the reason her son is dead. Because she sees that if Ginger had not gone through and had an abortion, that he never would have gone to Vietnam because he would have been a brand new father. And because he went to Vietnam, obviously, he came back with injuries that led to his passing away. She goes as far as to say that you basically killed my son as though you were swatting a fly in the window, or as though you shot him yourself.
I was like, lady, you're crazy.
And she is crazy because she went through all this trouble to do this to Ginger after all these years. Yeah. Now, she does say how she's left alone in this house tending to this garden where all this wonderful stuff used to happen, all this life used to be. And so that's why she's kind of like
Well, I guess during the last 6 months since this guy died, she must have just gone off the rails.
Yeah.
I mean, but still.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of beautiful what Ginger says. Ginger stands up for her own grief. She says, don't you think that I've gone through this loss as well? You know, I mean, she was forced pretty much to have the abortion. Her mother pretty much forced her to do it. She didn't want to do it. So she's had that loss as well, and the mother is not really seeing that. What's interesting, though, is that towards the end of the scene, Ginger says, you know, I'm choosing not to live in this pain. Now, her pain is a lot further away at this point, right? It's been 8 years since the loss of that child, whereas for the mother, it's only been 6 months. So basically, Ginger says, I am not going to suffer through this pain for you or with you. I'm moving on. Leave me alone.
Yeah, I mean, she's got her own baggage to deal with. She's got a kind of a rocky marriage.
Yeah.
So she's got to get dealing with that.
Exactly.
And men throwing themselves at her.
One after another. It's like a video game. She's got it's zombies.
Throwing a pot holder at you, throwing a cake at you. No, I don't know. It's crazy. One thing I was thinking of when I saw the house is I wasn't sure if it looked really like a house. Mm-hmm. And then I kept thinking, maybe that's the Knollwood Country Club. Maybe that's a portion of it. So I'm going to do some research.
They might have to find a place that had a bunch of chrysanthemums in the garden.
Well, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to try to do a deep dive in that. Or maybe somebody can, if somebody knows what that location is, you can let us know. We'll have to look on that website that has a lot of the locations listed for knots. Mm-hmm. And then wasn't there one more thing you wanted to say, too, about...
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, I understand where Beatrice is coming from as well because, you know, her son passed away 6 months ago, and then the child that he and Ginger lost, you know, that was her only opportunity to have a grandchild. So I get where she's coming from, but it certainly doesn't mean that she should be tormenting this poor girl 8 years later. And I did wonder in my mind, is one of the questions I had for you kind of for the after part of the show here, is that do you think she'd even have the means to do this?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Why is she doing all this?
How is she sitting there recording?
She's splicing up tapes and she's
pretty sophisticated.
Coming over to the elementary school to deliver flowers. Now let's talk about the flowers for a minute. These are actually not chrysanthemums.
Those are marigolds.
These are marigolds. They're actually for Dia de los Muertos. But the chrysanthemums, I know this because I used to date a Japanese gentleman, that chrysanthemums are actually the symbol of grief for many Asian cultures. Oh. They are used in funerals. So that was a really good tie-in right off the bat that the flowers were a source of her grief.
Wow. Okay. You learn something new every day.
We have a little denouement.
The denouement.
Which is basically a really quick scene of just Kenny and Ginger back at the house. And Ginger does tell him about the past.
She finally reveals that she did have the abortion.
Yeah. I think it was actually a really sweet scene. It really showed Kenny as like a decent guy which he hasn't really been shown in that light so far. I mean, with the episode with
I think he was pretty decent this episode.
Yeah.
He called, right? He
Yeah.
tried to call her.
Yeah. And I think he is he is decent. Like, even in the episode with the Cosmic Steeple party, when Sylvie was there, he also didn't want to go through with whatever she was throwing at him, and he was trying to find Ginger.
Yeah.
Now, how long will that attitude last? Don't know.
Remember, what Ginger wants, Ginger gets.
But in this episode, he just looked so handsome. His little blue eyes. He looked good. So again, happy birthday, Jim.
Happy birthday, James Houghton.
Yes. Now, moving on to our kind of wrap-up, we can talk about, if there are any other burning questions you have about this episode, or what you thought about the writing and the directing, or how it fit into the Knots Landing universe. What did you think?
I actually enjoyed it because I felt like it was finally giving Ginger and Kenny something more to do, and especially Ginger.
Yeah,
I felt like sometimes she just doesn't have much of a part. I think she did a really good job. And it was nice to see her.
I have a little bit of backstory on this I wanted to share. Seems like a good time to do so. This episode to me does feel like kind of one of the original ideas maybe that David Jacobs had about these different couples, the scenes from a marriage concept, right? So you have the young couple, Kenny and Ginger. He is a music producer. He's kind of wild and crazy, a little bit of a swinger. Apparently, in an interview I read on knotslanding.net with David Jacobs, the original storyline was to have Kenny use Ginger really as kind of arm candy and pimp her out. There was a reference to that a little bit, right, in that one episode?
Yeah.
Where she says, the funny business, the music business is the funny business.
Yeah.
The guys always have their hands all over me. Well, apparently that was going to be a storyline where he actually asked her to sleep with somebody for some reason. But they actually ended up switching that over to Laura,
I was going to say, that's Laura
that
had
was
done
the
that.
Laura and the Richard and that Chip Todson guy from that one episode.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things that changed in this first season that were originally part of David Jacobs' concept. In fact, in the pilot episode, the storyline of the lie with Laura going to the bar and having that date rape scenario was actually going to happen in the pilot. And I guess they even filmed some of it. And then when they were editing it or something, like, this is ridiculous. We can't have both Annie sleeping with some guy in Karen's bed and have Laura sleeping. It was like too much
going on. Yeah, you got to start slow.
I also read another interview on knotslanding.net. So shout out to them. They always have these great lengthy interviews with people that work on the show. And this is an interview with Kim Lankford. She mentions this particular episode. And she always found it kind of disappointing that she and Ginger were not included in the sort of like the specials, that came later after the show was done, the kind of reunions, because she felt that this particular episode was very timely at the time. I guess this concept of people going to Vietnam, having had children, this was a big situation that people dealt with, So she was really proud of the episode, and I think she did a great job. I do like that it does seem like a tie-in finally to that earlier episode where they had the flashbacks with the mother. It gave that more weight because I felt before that was a little flimsy.
Yeah.
We already mentioned a lot of the guest stars, but we can't end this podcast without talking about the guy who played Arthur, who's just so silly.
Oh, tell me more. Tell me more.
Well, I don't really have a lot of information. He actually didn't do a lot of acting. I mean, he did some, but he took huge breaks. So, he did some in this time period, and then he did some in the 90s, and he did some much later. His name is Alan Brownstein. So, anyway, I'd say he was kind of a scene stealer, to be honest.
Yeah, he was. He was fun. He was
a lot of energy. It was a lot of fun.
I always liked the comedic type of thing. So I loved Arthur coming over to Ginger and Kenny's house. And that line just did it for me about, I have some great African rhythms. Fascinating African rhythms.
That was great.
Okay, I would love to see him bring over his record collection, see the party.
My favorite scene, I think for humor, I really like the Pythagorean theorem moment. That was really cute because it gave the rest of the cast outside of the Kenny Ginger something to do, so that was fun. For the drama, I suppose the last scene, was good between Ginger and Beatrice. And
what about the kids, though? The kids were cute, too.
I was going to say that's the other scene. That really touched my heart because it reminded me back to...
They're very sweet.
My experiences in kindergarten. I would have been that age, so that just gave me all the feels.
Oh, the tears.
Maybe I'll put up a picture of me in kindergarten.
Yeah.
really the only other thing I wanted to say before we get to the barometer is that while we did feel the episode was a little anticlimactic because it was a stalker storyline that ended up not being really a stalker storyline, do you remember, is there any other storyline that takes this concept a little bit further?
You mean in later episodes?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's possible.
Remember that Karen has a talk show?
Oh, yes.
And the
Oh, I
producer,
remember.
Jeff,
Yeah.
similar kind of vibe. They take that one through many episodes.
Well, that goes on for quite a while.
Yeah,
it's different, though. It's
different,
more...
Sure. All right, we are now at that point. We're coming in for a landing to get right down to the Lotus Point and find out just how highbrow or lowbrow we found this episode. What did you think, Doug?
I'm going to give it a 3.
Okay.
Now, I think for many of the reasons that we were just talking about, that it did fizzle a little bit towards the end, and maybe there were some missed opportunities, but I would say it was a pretty good episode. I was gripped. What I liked as well was the fast pacing on this one, and you just kept going, so you never had a moment to kind of fall out too much from the storyline. So, yeah, I give it a 3.
I give it 3.5.
Ooh.
I'm going to be totally honest here. I kind of remember this episode. So in other words, I kind of remember that the source of all of these gifts was not what we think it is. But, for me, it was really well handled. The whole concept of this backstory and all that stuff was really great. That's what gives it the highbrow. And then the stuff before kind of pulls it down a little bit because it's this great kind of madcap whodunit. But overall, an enjoyable episode. I really liked it. So, Doug, should we tell everybody what's coming up next on Seaview Circle?
Next on Seaview Circle, Karen discovers that she's pregnant and can't decide if she's delighted or devastated. I don't know.
I don't remember this one.
I don't remember it either.
Well, we'll find out what happens next week, and we will see
you then back on the sack.
Thank you for watching, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.